Hello, welcome to Real Men Talk. I'm Dr. Nadine, a Florida licensed marriage and family therapist, and we're welcoming you to our inaugural episode. Real Men Talk is a channel devoted to male issues, both physical and mental, and in particular, devoted to those conversations that are typically the ones not had. And so originally, we had intended to begin our season with a discussion of pornography. And then something interesting happened during the last week of April in preparation for May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. On the 26th, there was an interview given by the actor Patrick Dempsey. For those of you who watch television, I think he was McDreamy. Actually, I think he's McDreamy on Grey's Anatomy. And so apparently it became news because he divulged in an interview that he cried. And so before beginning the discussion, let me show you the clip that really got my attention, and then we'll continue our conversation.
Cried while filming his final appearance on the show.
I love it. I don't know who doesn't. What woman doesn't like to hear that a man shows emotion when something is near and dear to him?
Well, apparently Sherry doesn't like that, so don't cry in front of Sherry.
Oh, you don't. You like a guy that's like.
That's rough guys.
Rough guys, Sherry.
You got 2 times to cry in your life. You cry more than twice with me, we breaking up, because I can't have somebody breaking a house.
Wow.
Let me just say, somebody breaking my house. We both can't be crying. Now we both can't be crying. I'm not crying.
You're honest about what you're looking for in a man. I get it.
Crying women turn me on. I love runny mascara face. That's awesome.
Oh, that's your bigger fetish.
And so what's concerning about this clip? Well, to put it bluntly, the characterization of men crying and how the immediate transition went from the discussion of a man crying to challenging his masculinity, associating it with weakness. There were so many subliminal messages in what was discussed. It basically reinforced everything that supposedly our society has been shifting away from in our battle to fight toxic masculinity. So how is it that we want men to be more empathetic, to have better control of their anger, more importantly, to be able to discuss their emotions and be in touch with their emotions, and yet one of nature's most natural ways of expressing calming and soothing is problematic, because if they cry, then they are weak. And I also found it fascinating that it should make the news. I'm wondering if his co-star, Ellen Pompeo, had divulged that she cried, whether or not anyone would have even taken notice. And so there really is a challenge here about how we view men and what constitutes a real man, a strong man, and what we tend to discuss as weakness. Now you can say, okay, fine. This is Dish Nation. It's a gossip show. There's certain comedy based here. And so, they were going for the obvious laugh. But can't write it off that easily, and let me show you why. So here's the original story, the interview with the quote that appeared on a Variety on 4/26. Patrick Dempsey had the question posed to him, so how emotional was the filming? If you notice, what he said is, we all cried at the beginning and we hugged each other. That was the total extent of what he said that then everybody picked up on. And when I say everybody, I do want you to see how this particular very basic sentence. This self-revelation turned into something so much bigger. So the following day after the Variety interview, basically People magazine posted on both online and in print. Patrick Dempsey reveals he cried filming Final Grey's Anatomy cameo. And you see that the focus changed from a discussion of what the cast was going through and focused on he, the male, crying. Now you could say, okay, fine. That's just, People magazine. But no, the trend continued. If you look over here, we've got another report, similar characterization by insider.com. US Magazine, again, focusing on the emotionality of his interview and his share. Now, why is this so significant? It was significant because not only was it the entertainment media that focused on this, actually mainstream media picked up on it. And as a result, it did make mainstream news. On 4/29, the day before the Dish Nation segment, Gayle King, who had a longtime anchor with CBS This Morning, very highly credentialed. I have a lot of respect for her, have watched her for years. On CBS This Morning, which is a mainstream morning news show, basically had a similar conversation along the same vein. And she focused as well on a discussion of men crying. And her piece contributed the fact that she's not okay with ugly men crying. In other words, and to her credit, she did say she was okay with men crying. She just was not okay with ugly men crying. And this whole discussion is significant because basically it continues to perpetuate the expectation that we need our men to be stoic, emotionally reserved, in control at all times. And at the same time, we're in a period in history where we're focused on essentially addressing toxic masculinity, changing, the relationships between men and women, encouraging men to be more empathetic. And yet, what we just showed them, and we spent a week on the news, different media channels, different types of news, etc. We spent a week focused and devoted to the fact that men crying we shame them. In a nutshell, that's really what this is about. We shamed a man for this, well, no, not a man specifically. His divulging that he cried created an opportunity where on national media, men in general were shamed for crying. That the whole idea of a man and shedding a few tears over the beginning of a reunion on an episode. Nowhere in the original interview was there a discussion of Patrick Dempsey losing control or sobbing uncontrollably, but that's where everybody went in their review of the conversation. Ugly men cry, being robbed, and a guy, and the man in the room crying. All of that speaks to an expectation that we have about what masculinity is all about, what masculinity is supposed to look like. And I have to ask myself, what would be the fallout if we attempted to publicly define femininity with the same basic disregard? Now, again, I before I discuss why this is something that we really, it sounds so small, but it's so significant. And I want to be able to explain, and I want to show you exactly why it is that I feel so strongly about this particular discussion. Let's first look at why crying is so important. And the reality is that both men and women are designed to cry. There is no physiological gender difference between a male capacity to cry and a female's capacity to cry. The emotional crying works the same in both genders. So what is so significant? What is so important about crying? That it is one of a human's easiest, most accessible, natural way to reduce stress and relieve emotional pain. And realistically, we already know, we have the science, we have the research that discusses when we repress strong emotions, that there are consequences. There's consequences for our immune system, our cardiovascular system. It leads to hypertension. These are all things that we know. In addition, if we take it to the realm of our mental health issues, we know that repressed emotions lead to increased levels of stress, anxiety, depression, which all basically interfere with a person's ability to successfully navigate their emotions. And so on the one hand, we're saying that we want men to be able to navigate and be in touch with their emotions. And on the other hand, we want to take away from them one of the most powerful tools they have to do so. So let's talk about how this actually works. The bottom line is that when we cry, it flushes out the stress hormones from our system. It basically drains it right out of us. And that's why you actually can feel a little tired after you cry. And then in addition, it releases oxytocins and our internal opioids, which we're more familiar with and commonly referred to as endorphins. And the function of these chemicals for us is that it reduces, it helps us address both physical and emotional pain. And so the important end result here is the fact that we have a natural mechanism to help diffuse stress, pain, and basically soothe ourselves. And we're saying, okay, women, we can do that. But men, no, that will make you less masculine. You can't protect us if you're crying and you're emotional. And interestingly enough, this particular message is now, this is a side note, it's seeping over to the women. I've had a number of women in between 20 and 30 who are having difficulties crying because they've been taught and perceive it as weakness as well. So while I'm focused on how this is affecting men and has traditionally affected men, I also want to put out the warning that this attitude is seeping over to women as well. And it's unhealthy for both genders. So the bottom line is we don't want it becoming increasingly common that crying is perceived as a weakness. This is a tool for both men and women. But more importantly, right now, what I'm focusing on is allowing men to tap into the use of something that they are already designed to do. So what's the takeaway from today's discussion? The takeaway is that our society needs to change how it is that we view men, okay? It shouldn't be acceptable for us to, go where Sherry Shepherd did and basically equate men crying with their masculinity, their ability to protect. The bottom line is crying has nothing to do with a man's ability to protect anyone. Okay. And the other piece of what she was talking about, which also needs to be addressed, is the message that women give men that if you cry, it's unattractive. We don't want you. Okay. That message has to stop, both from how we are characterizing it and how men internalize it. I'm sorry, but a female is just as unattractive when they openly sob as a man is. There's no such thing as an attractive sobbing person. Okay. Which brings us to the Gayle King contribution of the whole discussion on ugly man cry. It is not specific to men. No one looks really attractive. Your face gets flushed, you get red and blotchy. There is nothing attractive about the process. And the reality is, are we that superficial that that's what we need to focus on? The attractiveness of the process? No, that's really not the value here. So let's talk about what we do need to focus on. So here are the issues. When men stuff their emotions, it contributes to increased levels of depression, anxiety, anger issues. They have difficulty empathizing. Frequently, and this comes up quite a bit when I'm dealing in couples counseling, an ability to understand their own emotions and then communicate that with their partners and their significant others, which then leads to relationship challenges, which is, again, extremely common. But it's really this next piece that is at the heart of today's discussion, and why this whole discussion struck me as so significant. Men are encouraged not to feel their emotions. The one emotion that we have no problem with is anger. We expect men to be aggressive. We're okay with them experiencing anger. But there are other emotions we don't encourage them to get in touch with. We use on a regular basis, we tell boys, because it all starts with the younger ones. From when they're little, we tell them to suck it up, quit crying like a girl. Okay. Men don't cry. All of these are common threads of messaging that we start instilling in boys that they then carry into manhood with them. And, when they get to adulthood, we're telling them that they're unattractive for doing it, and it's not something that we appreciate. And so should we be surprised when, after years and years of giving them the message that it's not okay to feel your feelings, that men tend to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol more frequently than women? Men have higher rates of alcohol consumption. Men are more likely than women to use illicit drugs. But the one that really, really drives the point home is that men die by suicide 3.63 times more than women. Okay, 3 times more than women. And so is there a correlation? The fact that men are uncomfortable with difficult emotions and are discouraged from expressing their emotions? Yeah, this is a problem. And the bottom line is the messaging needs to change, and it needs to change now. We need for men to become comfortable with their emotions, with being able to soothe themselves through crying. And we need to see it as a man being in touch with himself and understanding himself, not as a negative when they do cry. The real message here needs to be that men should do, and it's good for them to cry. So, thank you for basically spending some time with us to discuss all the reasons why we need to change how we look at men and their emotions. I do want to take a moment and do a little self-promotion on one of the ways that we can begin to change this dialogue earlier. Richard and the Boys is a book that I have written. The prologue was contributed by Jason Caffey, a former NBA player, and the foreword was written by a former teammate of his on the championship Chicago Bulls teams from the 97-98 era, and his teammate Steve Kerr. And the bottom line is that the book addresses all the myths surrounding going through puberty. So if you have young men in your lives and you aren't comfortable with having the chat, and you want something that basically addresses both the bad information that's out there and the correct information, and does it from a way that boys will easily relate to, I will highly recommend this book. Now, to be perfectly frank, I don't care what book you use. I just want for conversations to begin early, to be frequent. We need to start talking. If we want our men to talk, we need to get our boys to talk. And okay, so now you're going to ask yourself, well, why is a woman leading the charge for Real Men Talk? And I have to tell you, I'm driven to do it because in therapy, I've had quite a number of men discuss the fact that they're more comfortable discussing difficult issues, whether it's physiological or emotional, with a woman than they are a man. They feel less judged, less threatened. In addition to that reason, I'm also the mother of two 20-year-old boys. Oh, excuse me, they kill me for calling them boys, young men. And to be perfectly frank, on the older one, I kind of missed the boat. I expected that, the men in their lives, coaches, etc., would step in and have the conversations. But the reality is that, 26% of the households in this country are led by women. And even in the households not led by women, there's an expectation that women are the emotional gatekeepers. We're the ones that talk about these topics. And so the bottom line is, if we want our men to be comfortable talking about these topics, women need to step up and be comfortable talking with men about these topics. And so that brings us to the Real Men Talk channel. And I don't care if you see me as your doctor, your aunt, your mother, whatever way you need to be comfortable with the fact that someone is talking to you about these issues or talking with you about these issues, I'm good with it. If you have any ideas or topics that you would like us to cover, please feel free to put them in the comments. And I would invite you to subscribe and join us on this journey where, hopefully we create a world where real men talk. Thank you.